All right, we're set to go with this first fight of the evening. It's for the WBC Light Heavyweight Championship of the World. Adamek is an unknown factor. He's beat everybody, knocked out most. 20 knockouts and 28 wins, so Briggs will have to be cautious early. Paul Briggs has spent the last year in the United States training under Jack Mosley. He's got good speed, good power.
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Get it back! This should be the round of the century. Look at Holyfield! What a warrior!
If he weighs 205, his heart weighs about 204.
Hello Boxing Asylum listeners and welcome back to Punches from the Past, the show where we delve into boxing's rich history and talk about the fights that really mattered. I'm Steve and joining me on the call for this Season 2 special, the final episode in fact, is Asylum stalwart Andy Patterson. In previous episodes you heard us going back in time to cover the likes of Joe Lewis and Max Schmeling, Bernard the Executioner Hopkins and Felix Trinidad, Dwight Mohammed Karwi against Evander Holyfield, and Carl Froch's two epic battles with Mikael Kessler, just to name a few. But this time we travel back to 2005 and an Aussie versus Poland clash between two engaging characters. Interesting backgrounds, Andy, especially Briggs, who had quite the upbringing before he even entered a boxing ring in the first place.
Yeah, he took off to Thailand, I think it was in 1990, but he started his combat career at the age of 15. He took up kickboxing. I think by the age of 17 he was fighting for what's called the WKA title, so I think it's like the World Kickboxing Association title. Out in Thailand, and I think I don't know if he won it or if he challenged for it. I forget which, but ended up retiring, and by all accounts, that gave up combat sports and went on to become a DJ. So it was, as you say, a weird start to, well, I suppose a weird start to combat life. But as you say, Steve, there was a wee bit darker side than that as well. Obviously, the bit earlier in his career, I really don't know if it was earlier in his life or if it happened in Thailand, for example. But apparently, he was raped as a child.
Yeah.
So I don't know what age. I couldn't see anything or find anything on that actually. But he would ultimately, I'd rather just jump straight on it. But he would obviously go and become a long-term drug abuser and stuff, and he would be separated from his wife and children, and as his life kind of went on. But is he like turned pro in that? He picked up, like you say, some regional titles, mainly the IBF title in his 6th fight, and became Australian 175-pound champion in his 8th fight. So it was a good start to his pro career. But got knocked out in his 2nd pro fight, though. That was the only thing, against a guy called Laro Zada, 3 rounds. And the weird thing about that fight was that Zada never even fought again after that fight.
Yeah, it was quite bizarre that he did mention obviously his personal problems and the issues he had at home. And a book actually came out. He mentions it on Wikipedia. He co-authored it right before the Adamek fight, which was, I suppose, a bit of a strange time to bring it out.
Briggs looks like a choir boy, but when his autobiography came out after the last fight, he revealed that he had been raped by a relative as a boy, that he had been a kickboxer in Thailand at the age of 15, that he came home at 20 plus and became a standover man or a mob enforcer, that he was a drug addict, that he was a DJ, a colorful character whose father and uncle were fighters. He can fight.
He told us, Emanuel Stewart, that before the autobiography was published, he had last-minute second thoughts because his story is so dark. Is it good for him to get it all out?
I think it's good for him in more ways than one. First of all, people out here in life who's had those same experiences that he's had probably sympathizes with him, is more attracted to him. Plus, also, the fact that it's made him...
You know, so he was bringing out these demons and he'd got through all these early fights. And as it happens, I know I've mentioned this before, but back in the day, I was sort of getting into boxing around the early 2000s, and I'd got hold of a career set of Paul Briggs on videotape. The quality wasn't the best, but some Australian guy sent it to me. So I'd actually followed his career quite closely, a lot more closely than people would have thought at the time, right back to his fights with Moses Sorovi. I don't remember seeing the Zada fight, although you are right, it was strange. I think Zada might have come from a kickboxing background himself or something. But anyway, I saw the Moses Sorovi fight, Jamie Wallace as well, Daniel Rosell, who was a decent enough fighter. You mentioned the IBF Pan Pacific Cruiserweight title. Back then he was fighting up at Cruiserweight. Tosca Petridis, quite a character, well known by the commentators, well known on the Australian fight scene, bit of a hard man. Briggs got rid of him as well. And then Adrian Bellin, who was 15-3-1. That was the vacant Australian light heavyweight title. And if I remember rightly, the interesting thing about that fight was I think it might have ended in the 7th or 8th when Bellin retired back in 2000 it was. But even though Briggs was the former kickboxer, midway through like the 4th or 3rd round, I think it was, Bellin took a kick at Briggs in the ring. He got frustrated in a clinch and took a kick at him. And I remember the commentators going, "Oh, he's taking a kick at the former kickboxer himself." So Bellin was quite the character as well. But he got through these wins, as you say. He was even fighting guys who were only 2-0, 3-2-1, 4-2-1, and they were getting in bits and pieces of experience. But it was the Glenn Kelly fight in 2002. He was 28-1-1, Kelly. I'm assuming he had lost to Roy Jones by that point. OPBF light heavyweight title, defense from Paul Briggs, and he annihilated him. Briggs got rid of him. And Briggs at that point, who was nicknamed the Hurricane, Andy, showed that he had the power moving up. So we always knew he had that punch power.
That's what I was going to ask me. Obviously, you've seen far more of his career than what I have actually. That was going to be one of my questions. You were talking about all those names and that. How was his power coming up through the ranks? You just kind of basically confirmed it there.
His power was decent. He had good one-punch power, and the commentators often mentioned it. But he was a grinder. He was fit. He was strong. He would throw a lot of punches. He would take a lot of punches. Obviously, people who've watched the Adamek fight will know that. He took a lot of shots, even against these lower-level guys. Against people like Kelly, he just absolutely steamrolled him. Brad McNeil, that was another one, got rid of him as well. But was his power going to carry up to the highest level? That was the question. Because when he fought Jorge Castro, who was a tough survivor, didn't manage to get rid of him. I remember his fight with Jesus Ruiz. I'm not going to tell the listeners to go and watch it because it wasn't a great fight. It was a 12-rounder, and it was the second but last fight before he got the shot against Adamek. And Ruiz was a slippy one. I think Briggs might have dropped him early. Or in fact, I think Ruiz actually might have dropped Briggs early because Briggs wasn't always the toughest around the beard area. He got knocked down a couple of times early on, and obviously he got knocked out as well. But don't bother going watching that Ruiz fight. It wasn't great, but it showed maybe a few deficiencies, which he ironed out in the last fight I watched before Adamek, which is against a guy you will probably remember, Andy, 26-0 Croatian, Stipe Dervis in 2004. Do you remember this guy, the Spider-Man?
Spider-Man? No. He never fought in the UK, did he?
He never fought in the UK. I'm going to bring his record up right now. This was, I think it was probably some kind of WBC eliminator that finally just propelled Briggs into the shot at Adamek. But he ended up his career 32-2. He was a light heavyweight southpaw, and I'm trying to look right now as we speak who he fought, because I remember him on the Eurosport scene. He fought Oval McKenzie.
He fought Antonio Brancali on the Hino fight cleverly at one point.
Brancali fought cleverly, that's right. Kai Kazara around at the time, Silvio Branco, eventually lost to Danny Green. Did he get disqualified, or he lost a load of points? I think it was the Briggs fight, actually. He lost a load of points in because he, like I said, he was nicknamed the Spider-Man, and he was a southpaw, and he was really negative and hard to watch. He was a grabber, a jabber and a grabber, and he would get involved in a lot of clinches, and he would win by death by 1,000 cuts early on. But against Briggs wasn't standing for that, and I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of points deducted.
Yeah.
But,
there was here, mate. I've just pulled up some notes for that fight. So basically, Drews was down 3 times and deducted 3 points for kneeing and headbutting Final scorecards were 115-109, 117-105, and 113-109.
There you go. Then you've looked into it. I didn't look into that one before, and I'm just trying to remember from the time, and it was a hell of a long time ago since then. But as for Adamek, I don't know. He was an unknown quantity. Whenever Briggs got the title shot, I was made up for him because I'd followed his career so closely, and I genuinely thought he was going to win this fight because I knew nothing about Adamek, who was
what about
like
Tarver though? Do you think, obviously because Tarver, like, he wanted to go in and fight Glenn Johnson. Do you think if Briggs had got Tarver, do you think he would have beat him?
No, I don't think Briggs would have beat Tarver, not that version of Tarver at the time, to be honest. It was just because Adamek was 28-0, but I'd never seen him. I hadn't seen any of his fights up until that point, you see. I'm looking down his record. He'd beaten Ismail Abdul. Everybody goes the distance with him.
Yeah.
He'd had a couple of fights in Finland, which was due to a promotional link-up. He'd actually fought in 2002 in the Telewest Arena, Newcastle, against journeyman Varajan Davtoyan. I remember him around the British scene as well. And obviously, he'd also had a lot of fights. So this is Adamek in his native Poland. He'd fought actually in England a few times. His debut was in England. I'm just finding this all out now. I should have checked this out before.
Yeah, I did check that, but I forget who the promoter was. And I remember reading I think it might have been a Ring Magazine website saying he was having some issues, promotional issues. He ended up having to, I think that's how he ended up relocating to America. But as you say, Adamek, was decent amateur career for him as well. European bronze '98 in Belarus, amateur champion in Poland. I think it was 2 years hard running, '95, '96. Funny enough, he was actually selected to actually represent Poland at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, and he was actually one of the favourites to go and take a medal, and decided to even turn pro and retire with an amateur record of 108 wins with 12 defeats. We're talking about it actually just off air, than that. Actually, we found it kind of weird who his personal hero is actually. Usually it's usually a sports star or someone you kind of. But this guy, he's a devout Catholic, obviously, but he cited Pope John Paul as his man. So he was a personal hero actually, and
he's trying to find a back route, I think, up into heaven, isn't he, old Adamek there?
It's always good to have plus signs in your column, mate, when you snuff it. Make sure you get a good seat when you move in there. But no, he was a good fighter actually. As it picked up a few fringe titles coming up through up to the first Briggs fight. I think he did actually even train as an electrician before he even started boxing.
Yes, that's quite right. Yeah.
Grew up in a wee mountain village of 5,000 inhabitants. Just typically, actually, I was reading a wee bit of his story with him and his mates would go over, like, say, the nearest village across the hills and stuff like that, and try and nick all the birds for, like, all the local villages over there and start fights and stuff. Remind me a wee bit of my youth. That I used to go nip over the next village and cause a wee bit of havoc in that as well. So getting involved in a wee bit of chaos, So
yeah, I was just checking out a couple of his British fights, as I suspected. It was on a Frank Warren undercard, the 2002 venture into Newcastle. That was on the undercard of Alex Arthur's British title win over a friend of the pod, Carl Greaves. We actually spoke to Carl about that fight in a previous episode on one of the Sunday night pods. Also, Ricky Hatton was busy defending his WBU title against Joe Hutchinson. Joe Calzaghe was defending his WBO title during the reign of terror against Tucker Pudwell. Ooh. So there you go. You've got Tomasz Adamek, who was 20-0 at the time, and also an undefeated Ukrainian. I think it was Alexander Vetuk was on the card as well. So Frank would pretty much stick anyone on back in the day.
Well, it definitely would. But just when you mentioned Tucker Pudwell and that, it was. I know we all kind of like say lambast the opponent. It's like, I think it was he no last minute replacement? Was it Thomas Tate or Frank Tate? I forget who was Frank Tate. That's Emmerdale, isn't it?
Frank Tate, yeah, he was the nun here, wasn't it? It was Thomas Tate, yeah.
Thomas Tate, aye.
Yeah,
I was at that fight, aye. It was quite a vicious knockout, actually, if I remember rightly. Joe caught my right hook. I think his eye swelled up pretty instantly as well.
Yeah, he got rid of him. Yeah, Thomas Tate had fought Otka previously as well. Right, before we get too far down a bandwagon, down a black hole, sorry, we do like to go off on little tangents on punches from the past. Let's get on to the fight itself then. So both guys are in here. One loss for Briggs, no losses for Adamek, in and around the 25 to 30 fights mark, each of them. You mentioned about Adamek there, Andy. He broke his nose in sparring 2 weeks before the fight. Shows what a tough guy he was. He still came in. Larry Merchant was laying down the Paul Briggs story as he entered the ring. But here's a guy, broke his nose 2 weeks before in sparring and said, I'm just going to have a bit of this anyway.
Yeah, tough fella. Like, I mean, you could probably, I think as well as it was his big opportunity. I think it was his first fight in America and that as well, fighting for a world title. in Chicago, you're going to get a big Polish contingent, especially on the East Coast and that as well. So everything was there. If he won this fight, it was going to open up doors for him, big money fights and stuff. Big guy for the weight as well. You could see this. I thought there was a wee bit, especially I thought there was an apparent size difference between the two of them. And he did seem to start quicker, I think, in the end, especially on the draw. Quicker shots, chopping shots by Adamek and that. But I thought Briggs was able to respond to some of the shots and that as well. But definitely, first round, I thought Adamek definitely stole it. But Briggs cut, obviously, I think it was early on in the second, but accidental clash of heads. Doctor was called, unfortunately, but said it was okay to continue. But I think after the cut, actually, I think Briggs started becoming a wee bit more aggressive. Certainly when the fight got restarted anyway. Then round 3, I mean, he hurt. Well, I think he definitely did hurt Adamek, because you see the wee stutter step in that, and Adamek did give a wee bit of ground, and you see Briggs instantly kind of try to leap on that.
Yeah, there wasn't a great deal happened in the opening round. I have that written down as well. I thought Adamek looked a bit gaunt for light heavyweight, and it was no surprise that he moved up to cruiserweight shortly after. Yep, there was a terrible cut around Briggs' left eye in the second round. There's no doubt about it. And it did seem to wake him up. Jack Mosley was in the corner, father of Shane. He told him that he needs to up the pace, basically, because he was getting picked off by the jab and the reach of Adamek. Like you said, Andy, the size was giving him trouble. Briggs fired himself up for the third round. Just in the corner of Adamek, we have Chicago's Sam Colonna, a former trainer of Mayo's Henry Coyle, actually. Nice guy, met him a few times. He's been over training Henry Coyle over the years. He was in the Adamek corner, nice Chicago link up there. Obviously, the fans were out in force. It was a hometown crowd for Adamek, no doubt about it, rather than Briggs. The version I watched had Colonel Bob on commentary. Colonel Bob Sheridan. He'd done quite a few Paul Briggs fights over the years, and the impression I got, Andy, was he was rooting for Briggs, basically. He was desperate to give him the third, which I thought was possibly up for grabs. He was mentioning Briggs' toughness and his Muay Thai background, but Colonel Bob, I don't know if you saw that version as well, he really wanted to give him the rounds.
That was the version that I watched, but I don't know if it's the same one, but did you have the one where it had that Global Glory advert?
Global Glory!
Oh, my word. First time I ever watched that DVD, it was in my head for weeks on end. Global Glory. It was like Hassan Rahman and was it Monty Two Guns
Monty
Barrett?
He was fighting, wasn't he? Yeah?
Oh my word!
Luis Collazo on the undercard.
Oh my word! It was something awful, wasn't it, mate? But it was the one that I watched, and you say it was a wee bit kind of. I've always kind of felt with that way, Bob Sheridan. Obviously, he's covered a lot of fights in Australia and the Far East and that, the Philippines and that. So he's always been out and about. He's always done the kind of Australian broadcasts and that. But I just, as you say, the Briggs was way fired up. He started the rounds 4 and 5, definitely on the front foot, forcing matters, landing some inside shots and that. I just think Adamek, as you say, as the fight kind of progressively wore on, his responses, he was. I just don't think he was. The tank wasn't there as such. I think he looked far better in the second fight physically than he did in the first fight, because you can see as that fight did start to kind of wear into the middle half. It was definitely kind of becoming grueling from Briggs. As I say, he's constantly starting quick. He was landing a few shots, and then he was able to kind of lunging in with shots. He was trying to push Adamek back. Adamek was trying to stand his ground, jabbing, trying to kind of get his distance and that properly. And probably I would need to say that maybe round 6 was probably Adamek maybe starting to get his foot back in the fight a wee bit. He was beating Briggs to the punch, both trying to kind of establish centre ring. But I just thought Adamek was landing a wee bit more, and that's the round 6. But I think it was with a minute left, Briggs landed a solid right hand, actually solid straight right hand. And he kind of then think he managed to try and follow it with 2 other shots. But Adamek was even able to respond to that and drive Briggs back with 2 shots of his own. So I thought that was a very, very good round by Adamek. But Briggs as well was shown in the 6th round as well that he was definitely in the fight. He wasn't going to be kind of getting bent over and he was there to win the fight. And for there on in, actually, it was very, very. I don't know how you scored this fight, but it was a hard fight to score, I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was relatively close. One of our friends of the pod thought that Tomasz Adamek was doing pretty well and pretty much bossed the fight. It wasn't one-sided by any stretch of the imagination, but he thought that he maybe took it pretty wide. I thought that his body work was the difference in the middle round. He started throwing to the body. There was a little rabbit punch here and there as well. Referee Tim Adams, who refereed both the contests, had a word with him there, but it wasn't an overly dirty one. Briggs, his honey punch was the right hand and he was throwing it a lot. But Adamek's size, again, his height, his reach was making it difficult for Briggs, and he was catching him coming in and the cut was worsening. I've just flipped down on my notes here and I got it in big letters. As we mentioned, Don King heavily pushing his August the 13th, 2005 Global Glory card. So that was something that I definitely noticed as well. Round 8, Andy, finally... it ignited, didn't it? Briggs' right hands, by this point, were starting to take their toll. And I thought in this round he briefly staggered Adamek enough for them to go toe-to-toe at the end. And that just gave Briggs some much-needed confidence.
It didn't. He peeled it in there. I mean, obviously, he clearly... I agree with you. He staggered him. I thought he hurt him. Briggs, you could see his instant reaction. He was piling straight in. Adamek, though, fair play to him. He attempted to respond. He was landing left hooks in response to that as well. Uppercuts. Which he even looked to land throughout the fight actually as well. But again, Briggs was responding with straight rights, and again over the course of it, just after that wee instant, I thought Briggs maybe stiffened Adamek again with right hand, and you can just see by the way that Briggs was attacking and stuff like that, just would refuse to cede ground on these both guys actually at one point. Briggs again attacking. Adamek looking slightly weary by this point. I think late on in the round 8, big round by Briggs, but also heavy weather for both fighters. Actually, both took big shots. But I thought Briggs definitely, actually won that round 8.
Well, Briggs started to tighten up the cards a little bit. It came to round 10, and I thought that by this point Briggs was possibly waiting a little bit too long, which was an issue throughout the night. Jack Mosley told him about that as well at times, and I thought that was the difference in a couple of rounds that were there for the taking for Briggs. He just waited too long, and I just snuck them towards Adamek, which eventually added up to my 116-112 scorecard to Adamek, because I thought that it made it sound by 4 rounds a bit wider than it was, but I thought that Briggs was just waiting too long. He was landing some good single shots. He was standing in front of Adamek too much, and Adamek was teeing off with these combinations. There were nice flowing shots from both hands, really, and he was siding in the hooks and the uppercuts in the 10th. And Briggs, he just wasn't capitalising enough, and like I said, in the corner they were trying to get him going as well, and that was just the difference. I thought around that 9, 10, maybe the 11th was tighter again, but Briggs maybe just let it slip a little bit.
Yeah, because he started round 9 pretty good. He landed quite a heavy, dull body shot on Adamek, who responded with a 3-punch combo. So, again, at this point, even with a broken nose and that as well, he was really banged up at this point as well, Adamek. But I did think that Briggs was able to counter over Adamek's jab constantly over the course of the 12 rounds of this fight. But I did think, obviously, round 10, both naturally were tired and that, but one thing I did notice about the fight, Steve, was like there was practically zero holding by this point in the fight, round 10. That's what I've wrote down there.
I think the ref did a good job as well, Andy.
You never even saw the ref in the fight, I don't think.
No.
Timothy Adams, if that's who he is.
Yep. Tim Adams, yeah.
I thought Adamek seemed to be happy just to kind of keep it at mid-distance by this point, which may have even won him the round in round 10. Round 11, I thought Adamek, just basically looked to box. Maybe felt a wee bit more confident about his stamina. Maybe he felt he could maybe outbox Briggs on the back foot. But, he did a really good job in that round 11 by Briggs. But both would trade a lot of heavy shots and throw a lot of shots late in that round 11.
Yeah, I thought he was tiring towards the end. 116-112, I had it finally then in fight number 1. How did you score it, Andy?
I had it 115-113 to Adamek. I think Briggs needed a knockout in round 12 to win that fight.
Yeah, he did go for it, but it just wasn't quite to be. Let's quickly go through the box rec particulars just to tighten it up for you here. One of the judges, the Japanese judge, had it 114-114. He saw it all even. John McCarthy, 115-113, same as you. Then British judge John Keane saw a couple of even rounds, clearly. He had it 117-113. Tomasz Adamek was the WBC light heavyweight champion. The title was vacant, as you mentioned, Andy, after Antonio Tarver decided to fight Glenn Johnson. Around that time, I suppose Johnson had beaten Roy Jones. His currency was quite high. In answer to your question, as I said earlier, I think Tarver probably would have beaten Briggs. At that point, Tarver, he was tall, he was long, he was rangy, he was an awkward southpaw. He could punch a little bit, couldn't he? I think he probably would have picked off Briggs. It would have been competitive. It would have been tough. What's your opinion on that one? Do you think Tarver would have just done a little bit too much quality for Briggs?
Yeah, I think so. Plus, being a southpaw and that as well, he was very sneaky with his left hand and that as well. I agree with you. I just think it's a wee bit kind of matter of levels, and Tarver is kind of slightly underrated at times in that as well.
He definitely is. I know he became a laughingstock at the end, but he was an excellent amateur and very, very skilled. Yeah, so between the headbutts, the points being deducted and what have you, it was a very interesting contest, well, especially the cut, I suppose that was the main thing. Anyway, he was the champion, was Adamek. Let's have a look what happened in the intervening period before the rematch, because they did have a rematch in October 2006. What was Paul Briggs up to? He defeated Etienne Whitaker over in Germany by knockout, bit of a journeyman Whitaker. He then won a disqualification win over Jose Alberto Clavero, who was one of these Argentines who was knocking about at the time. In that period, Paul, let's have a look. Adamek went over to Germany. Remember this fight? He knocked out Tomasz Ulrich. I think it was in the 6th round.
Yeah, Olympic bronze medalist, 96 games in Atlanta.
He was decent, Ulrich. I remember him beating the faded spectacle of Graziano Roccigiani. He was 28-1 at the time. He was a decent enough boxer, but Adamek, I wouldn't say he toyed with him. It was competitive, but he really showed his quality and his experience. Going over to Germany, WBC champion, I bet he got paid nicely for it, and he just outboxed and knocked out Ulrich, and it showed how he was starting to develop the confidence of a champion, and that wasn't necessarily a good sign for Briggs going into the rematch.
It wasn't, I mean, obviously they were talking about the rematch potentially happening in Poland. Obviously, it was then mandated for a mandatory defence. It was, I think, some posts stated that the purse bid had been called. And they were talking about like early venues were like Poland, for example. So she says Adamek had also apparently sued Don King for breach of contract over inactivity.
Don, no, surely not. What?
Yes. I just noticed that there. So, obviously the suit would be eventually dropped. Don would obviously, pay something off, and presto, the fight happens. But I think the second fight actually happened, or shown on the HBO's chief support, the big man himself, Nikolai Violev against Monty Barrett.
That's right, the beast from the East. He was in action against Barrett. This was on the undercard. Obviously, that was a bit of a spectacle, but Don certainly served up an excellent undercard, and it was back in Chicago again, Andy, naturally.
Good. I mean, I was hanging with Don King and that. He always took the fights to, where we always get the big crowd in and stuff. But it was always going to be a good move that, Chicago, Atlantic City, as I say, anyone on the East Coast, New Jersey and stuff, that you're going to get the Poles and the Eastern Europeans that are always going to be interested in the big fights.
In an arena as well this time, hopefully, they all behaved themselves. There was no Riddick Bowe, Andrew Galotta, but all the action, all the fighting went on in the ring. And it was an interesting start in this one, actually. Adamek down in the rematch in round 1 from a left hook. He was cocking his own right hand, and Briggs caught him. And it was a good start for Briggs. It was exactly what he needed, to build his confidence in this fight.
Yeah, it definitely did. He started this fight quite quick. The rematch, as you say, came out early and drops a 1-2, which puts Adamek in the back foot. I don't know if you noticed, again, I mentioned at the first fight, and that his size in this fight was, he looked more refined, more muscular actually. So obviously he did the weight pretty good. I thought Adamek looked to box, probably shown a wee bit of respect for Briggs's power. Maybe don't want to get kind of too involved. And as Adamek kind of looked to come into the round, as you say, he got dropped by a left hook. Didn't look hurt though. Still trying to kind of press it late. Definitely a clear big round, but I looked at the punch in slow motion. Actually, it looked like more like a hook, disguised as a jab. So it was, so it's definitely a clear big round. And obviously, you say, gave him the confidence because he came out much again the aggressor in the start of the second round. And I think Adamek even might have got cut from another right hand of Briggs. Again, that right hand game was always a problem for Adamek over his jab. And both took it in turns to basically kind of land. But Briggs went to kind of make it a brawl actually, because I think that was probably his best opportunity really against Adamek, who was far better technician.
Yeah, the cuts were flying. Briggs was cut as well over the left eye. There was blood all over the place. Adamek had got rid of Sam Colonna by this point. He'd got Buddy McGirt in the corner. He was showing better head movement, better boxing skills, Adamek, I thought, which was no coincidence. Buddy's an excellent trainer. He just does tighten people up. Third and fourth, Adamek sort of... I mean, he was never coasting. These were just two tough guys, weren't they? But I thought Briggs had a very good fifth round, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say that probably round 3, you could see that probably against like Buddy McGirt, you saw it with Kovalev there in his fight against Alvarez in the rematch. That he managed to get Kovalev to box a plan, strategy. I think you could see that with Adamek in that round 3. Now you could see him sticking to his boxing, sticking to his strategy, and you see Adamek catching Briggs as he kind of tried to set up his own attacks. And Briggs was although he was having fleeting successes with the right hand, I just think Adamek's round was far better quality shots. And you see Briggs' corner pushing him, saying like, you're making him look good. Whereas you can see McGirt basically asked him, asked him for more body shots. And I thought round 4 took a similar path to the third round. Briggs, still landing clean right hands, but Adamek was responding in 2s and 3s.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how I'd feel about these two fights going back after so many years. I remember watching I used to stay up back then. I'm pretty sure the first fight in 2005, I stayed up through the night and watched it, being a Briggs fan. And I remember it being an excellent fight. And then the rematch as well, I remember that being a very good fight as well. I wasn't sure how I'd find them going back all these years later, but the first one was maybe a little bit of a slow burner, trying to build up to my expectations. But overall, I've thoroughly enjoyed the both of them. I have very limited notes, actually, for the second one. I mean, that's not to say it was a bad fight, but through 6 till about 11, the action was very enthralling, and it captured my attention. But it was quite samey. Both guys' tactics and strategies didn't really present me with too many notes. There was blood throwing, there was people getting wobbled at times. Briggs was doing the same thing, Adamek was doing the same thing, but that's not meaning it was like repetitive. It was still an engaging fight.
Yeah, you just got two guys probably on, at this point, probably at their peaks. I think that's fair to say. I think Adamek maybe kind of latter half his light heavyweight to maybe his early start, his cruiserweight reign was probably at his peak. Obviously, Briggs had his problems after this fight and that, but as you say, things never changed. Briggs always started the rounds aggressive. He's always putting the pressure on. He was always catching Adamek right hands, as I mentioned, over the jab. Adamek's nose was bleeding. It was broken in the first fight, bleeding in the second fight. One would land. The next one would respond with 2 punches. Just relentless aggression. I think that's probably the best thing you could say, actually. Round 6 was close. Maybe Adamek shaded it. I think Lederman actually had it 58-55 to Briggs after round 6.
Yes.
And again, Adamek landed a good couple of combos round 7. Briggs, he would press Adamek, again to try and punch and pivot. And he would just try move to the side, turn Briggs as best as possible. Again, round 8 was probably Adamek's more active round. He was more active in the early half of the fight, whereas it wasn't as much as Briggs, so to speak. He popped the jab and dropped left and good combos and that. But Briggs, again, always there, always trying to force matters. Then he gets hurt and he's forced to cover up, actually, late in round 8. And you can see, but Briggs, you can see him, still look to kind of find the right hand as he dug in. And Adamek just kind of kept the output going. And,
was it the 8th, Andy, or the 9th, whenever Tim Adams finally got fed up with Adamek's low blows and deducted him a point in one of the rounds?
Yeah, it was round 9, mate.
Okay.
Again, as I say, Briggs probably started far more aggressive. And obviously, at one point, Briggs was trying to respond as Adamek's kind of like chopping away at him and stuff. And what's happened is Adamek's landed a low blow.
Larry, your point about the legendary foul pole?
Andrew Galata. I was going to say that certainly Adamek has been a very fair pull, and that was an accident.
For sure, an accident that landed flush. And now Briggs is ready to go, and here they are. Harold. Emmanuel, what about the psychology of that one? Wait a minute. Briggs in big trouble. Adamek landed a hard right hand, and here goes the Polish fighter trying to close the show. Hard right hand by Briggs. Now he's in trouble again.
These are two tough guys, as Larry said. I mean, this is what makes great fights. Guys who refuse to lose. Once the momentum changes, they try to turn it around again.
but if you actually look at it in slow motion, it kind of like hit the hip actually, so it wasn't really kind of low blow as such. I think it was definitely Adamek round, but it was scored. It was definitely a 9-9 round with that point coming off. But
that was just keeping Briggs in the fight. I know that sounds like a silly thing to say, but it was just keeping him in, wasn't it?
It did keep him in actually, because but by this point, again, Briggs was always game, but by round 9 led him and then gave his scorecard again as 85-84 to Briggs. He gave the ninth round even 9-9. Both are tired at this point. You could see it in their work actually. Probably at this point, the work is probably not as great as what it has been over the course of the first fight and up to this point now in round 10. But round 11, Briggs, I thought, started more positively with the jab, right hands, and Adamek managed to get some shots off as well, especially in the second half of the round and stuff. But didn't think he'd done enough to kind of win the round. I thought Briggs maybe just done enough to shade round 11.
Briggs battering Adamek with a body shot, and again tries that right uppercut that Johnny Lewis wanted. Adamek with a combination of his own. Briggs says, "I'll make you bleed again."
Now there's a cut underneath the eye of Adamek.
1 round to go.
You can see, but round 11, Adamek's face was just crimson, wasn't it? It was just covered. It was just like a butcher had been having a go at him, actually. Then round 12, I think Lederman actually gave the 11th round to Adamek. Both were all happy to let it hang out in the 12th round. That's just the way it had to end, actually, I suppose. Just both standing the grounds and just kind of like wailing away, just punching bits of muscle off each other.
Adamek letting his hands go constantly despite the blood flowing from his eye and his nose.
Championship of the world is pretty much still up in the air going into the last round.
Expending every ounce of energy as the finish line comes into view.
Adamek is really fighting a really courageous fight. Look at, he really wants to try to keep his championship. And it's very hard to take the championship away from a man fighting the way that he's fighting right now.
You won't see too much more courage in the ring, and these two guys have exhibited in 24 rounds against each other.
What warriors!
Tomasz Adamek wouldn't be denied in the 12th round. He was going to win that round come hell or high water. It was mostly hell.
In the end, I think Lederman gave his scorecard in the end as 114-112 to Adamek.
Yeah, 114-112. Maybe I was being swayed by Lederman, but I thought that was about right, to be honest with you. And also, Andy suggested earlier that this was Adamek's peak, and I would agree with him. And the stats back it up, because in round 12, Adamek's nose was busted, his face was smashed to bits, and remarkably, he threw 119 punches. In the 12th round, 119 punches, according to CompuBox stats. So that's not a guy in his peak, Andy, given that his nose is pissing with blood, his eyes are half closed, his face is smashed to bits. He's into round 12 against someone like Briggs, 119 punches. It's just remarkable.
Incredible, as you say, mate. I mean, as a champion, you have to stand in there and do it, as you say, just unloaded, untold amount of punches. I mean, Christ, blows, I think that alone in round 12 actually was enough for him to win the 12th round, because obviously the point deductions were kind of keeping Briggs in the fight, but I had it 114-112 to Adamek, so that 12th round was big for him. I personally felt.
Yeah, 114-112 all round. Then for me, Andy and Harold Lederman. Ken Morita, the Japanese judge, had it 114-112 as well. Ray Hawkins, 115-111. They couldn't find a scorecard, unfortunately, for old Briggs over the two fights. Mero Di Fiore had it 113-113. Tomasz Adamek retains his title. We mentioned earlier that Adamek had Buddy McGirt in the corner, replacing Sam Colonna. There was also a change in Briggs's corner as well. Jack Mosley had disappeared, and the Australian Johnny Lewis had come into the corner. Very vastly experienced trainer, Johnny Lewis. He did a good job as well. Briggs, for all of his effort and for all of his heart, he just, by the narrowest of margins, by a couple of points either way on each fight. Well, it was by 4 points in the first fight on my card. Just couldn't do enough. And Adamek, I think, was just that step ahead of him in both fights. But the thing is, Andy, if you look at their contrasting careers afterwards, they really did go in completely different directions. It was from strength to strength, you could say, for Adamek. His career really did go on an upward spiral from this point. But as for Briggs, it was quite strange. This was the culmination for him. He never got to this point again. He didn't fight again until 2007 when he went in against Rupert van Aswegen, who I think possibly could be a South African. That was the vacant IBF Australasian title, but it just wasn't there for for old Briggs, was it? 3 years later, he came back against Danny Green in an absolute farce. The IBO title was on the line. That was about the only credible thing about the whole fight. I mean, to call it a phantom punch, that would even do it a disservice. He just went down. There was betting involved. The crowd weren't happy. Danny Green wasn't happy. And I always say this: that was a farce. That was ridiculous. I don't know what the hell was what the hell was going on at that time. But please don't judge Paul Briggs' career and what he is as a man off that Danny Green fight, because that was an aberration.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I mean, his problems started after that second fight with Adamek. He tried to obviously come back. Obviously, initially he'd retired due to problems that had been flagged during the medical for his nervous system. He believed the problems were behind him, and he attempted to come back at 168. However, he again had problems, and he had forced to retire again. As you say, he returned to the ring 3 years later. He fought Danny Green. As you say, it was a farce. I mean, Briggs was like 6 pounds overweight, and he got knocked out in 29 seconds. Again, as you say, it wasn't a knockout with such people claiming dive and all that sort of stuff. And online bookies noticed a massive shift in betting for a first round knockout. There was a massive surge of money going on him just before the fight started, actually, as well. So I think at one point as well, as the fight was due to take place in Sydney, but it got moved to Perth because New South Wales Commission refused to sanction the fight, actually.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
That's right, aye. So, and apparently as well, Danny Green's team refused. And by the way, they knew what Briggs' condition was. They knew, they must have known. Boxing, Steve, it's a small community. In a country like Australia, surely people have got to know things in gyms and word gets about and stuff. They must have known what Paul Briggs' situation was. Briggs, he was reported to have earned like $250,000 Australian for the fight. And in the aftermath, that the commission then fined him $75,000 because he claimed he hadn't disclosed the extent of his neurological problems, even though he had passed the doctor's pre-fight medical. It's insane. There were rumours that he'd been knocked out in sparring before the fight. There was the street gang called the Sword Boys that were suspected of fixing that fight as well. Apparently they had money, something like $100,000 on the fight, on Green to knock out Briggs in one round. It was passed to the cops. The IBO refused to sanction the fight. They even called for an investigation, which saw Green being cleared and Briggs being banned and having his license totally revoked. Briggs I think it would take 2 years for Briggs to eventually clear his name and get his $75,000 fine back. He got that money back in the end. But I don't know if you remember one Australian fighter, Steve Barry Michael.
Yes. He used to do the commentary, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. He fought Rocky Lockridge in some nightclub, actually. It was at Blazers, I think it was, for a world title, I think. He was at the weigh-in. He'd been quoted as saying Briggs looked terrible. He was so bad, he required help to take his shoes off, right? And apparently when he was walking to the ring, right, Briggs says he basically didn't know where he was going, how to get into the ring and stuff like that. He basically had to kind of try and guess himself into the ring.
That's right, yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. I've got some comments in that here for like he's a doctor. So this is for Jamie Padaram for the Australian Daily Telegraph, right? 29th of March 2012. First reported statement on Briggs' neurological condition, right? Dr. Malcolm Rivers examined Briggs for the pre-fight medical, noted that Briggs showed signs of abnormal cerebellar function and reduced visual field RTI. Briggs said Doc Rivers asked how many fingers he was holding up, and Briggs apparently responded he couldn't even see the hand.
That's bonkers,
right?
Man.
Those are Briggs' words, right, to the Australian paper. Rivers denies obviously signing off in the fight, but Rivers also didn't provide written statements to the investigation. It was called for by the IBO. I think it was eventually called, took 2 years to kind of come through. But Briggs was finally given a clear bill of health by Professor Armin Mohammed. And that MRI scan of the brain before the fight showed no significant abnormalities. Right? But Briggs then told investigators he went into the ring, he felt like he'd Parkinson's disease and was going to lose his balance walking up the steps.
I don't know what to make of it, Andy. I know he spoke very briefly afterwards and it's never been truly resolved, but he seems to be getting on okay now, which is a good thing. Apparently he's fighting fit, he's healthy, he's doing like motivational speaking engagements and stuff like that, and he does look in good nick, but I mean there's a shadow over that night, and will we ever know the truth? I think we can maybe guess what was going on.
Well, I did find something out if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got a couple of things actually. Obviously, the fallout of that fight. I mean, Briggs mentally and financially and that, he was just, he claimed he felt suicidal.
He was a pariah, wasn't he, in Australian
Really,
boxing?
really was. There's a good interview actually out with him. It's over an hour long actually. I need to find the link and maybe tweet it out.
Yep.
But Briggs, at one point he was acting as a standoverman for like local gangsters, drug bosses and stuff. And as you mentioned, the prospect, the gang influence in the Danny Green fight and that, another name that kind of, I don't know if it was included or if it popped up in the investigation, but it was a guy called Tom Domican. Right, Domican was known to have put the fear, right, into known hitmen called Christopher Flannery.
Mm-hmm.
He was known as a Mr. Rent-a-Kill, right? He was a bodyguard for like big organised crime boss George Freeman, right? The type of basically he was like the big mafia don. And it was basically they were like the big crime bosses back in the day in Australia, right? They were like the Don Corleones at that time, basically. So with that type of heat on you, wouldn't they be against the realms of possibility for taking a dive?
Yeah, Dominican was like an enforcer, I think, wasn't he? Going around sort of putting the fear of God into people. And it was murky. It was a murky end for Briggs, unfortunately. But as for Adamek, like I say, he did pretty well for himself. He was struggling by the weight, on the weight by this point, and he got put in against the 22-0 Chad Dawson. Antonio Tarver sort of slipped off at this point, but he got put in against Dawson, who was a damn fine fighter. I became a believer in Dawson this night. He made Adamek look, I thought, quite one-dimensional, quite slow. Dawson was fast. He was on the punch. February 2007. He really did outbox him for the WBC light heavyweight title. And I say this was Adamek's move up to cruiserweight here. But a quick word for Dawson. He looked spectacular that night, I thought.
He did. He was also dropped actually. Both fighters were dropped in that fight, if I recall. Actually,
I don't know. Was Dawson dropped? I know that Adamek was definitely dropped. I don't know if Dawson was now, to be honest
I
with you.
think
Let's have a look.
I think he may have been
Oh
dropped.
yeah, you're quite right, Andy. He was down in the 10th round. Yeah, must watch that again. So maybe an indication of Dawson's chin issues as well to come.
Yeah, he was always he was a straight up fighter though, wasn't he? Chad
Yeah.
Dawson didn't really kind of give a lot of head and body movement. Yeah, as you say, he was definitely struggling with the weight at this point. I'm trying to remember the first Cunningham fight. I'm just trying to kind of rack my brain. I think he should have. Was it that fight or was it the rematch? It was a big dispute about the cards.
In the Cunningham one.
Yeah.
I believe it was the
Must have been the rematch. I think
the,
it was the rematch.
yeah, because the first one was in 2008, wasn't it?
I think he become like, so he was recognised as like the man at cruiserweight by this point.
It was the 2012. I'm pretty sure it was the second one because it wasn't as far back as 2008. I don't think.
I mean, his reign at cruiserweight didn't really last that long. Maybe about a year or something. But
it was impressive though, Andy, because I tell you what, he knocked out O'Neill Bell, who's now dead, but he was an excellent fighter when he was alive, and he split decision Steve Cunningham. Jonathan Banks, no fool, 20-0. He knocked him out as well, and obviously Bobby Gunn, and we can put that to one side. But his cruiserweight reign is possibly underrated.
Possibly underrated. Again, probably at that time as well, as I don't think we had Hay really fully in the mix yet at that point. I might be wrong there. No, I think he might have been champion at that point, actually. But anyway, at the end of the day, I mean, I think oddly enough, he actually claimed that Galota was a good friend. They two ended up fighting. Galota was a fat mess by this point, 256.25 pounds. And to Adamek's 214. But I remember a fair bit of Adamek's heavyweight reign, actually, so to speak, heavyweight run. I mean, I remember the kind of, he gave up a lot of size, gave up a lot of weight, a lot of reach and stuff, but he did fight like Chris Ariola, big nipple, so to speak. Michael Grant, okay, at this point, Michael Grant's, he's not great, is he? But for a guy that size, Michael Grant's a big dude, for a heavyweight, and I think, it was probably Adamek trying to get the right opponents for a tilt at one of the Klitschko brothers, who were obviously, Vladimir was the WBC champ and Vlad was the all-conquering multi-belt holder and stuff. So I thought he was kind of like building up opponents to then build up to kind of fighting towards like the Klitschko fight. But then you fight the guys like Vinny Madalone and Kevin McBride before you fight Klitschko.
Shite.
That is pure shite, So I had money on the Klitschko fight actually from the last distance, and I was like, he never won a round the whole fight. I felt sorry for him. I seen that 10th round and I'm screaming at television, "Hold, you bastard! Hold!" I was just, I had a fair bit of money on him if I could last a distance, but he just couldn't hang in there. Good crowd though, actually.
He would have got some payday for that, I think, Andy.
It was in his home country. Actually, it was a big stadium actually.
Huge.
And I remember at one point there was a few of us actually talking about going over to go and watch it actually, but I think it just fell the wrong weekend of the September weekend or something like that. We couldn't make it. Beat Eddie Chambers. That was when Eddie was probably trying to kind of come back down and weight at that point.
But that's the thing, though, Andy. You're right. These aren't great names, guys like Chris Ariola, Eddie Chambers, like you say, Travis Walker, Dominic Gwynn, Spilker. But they're decent enough sized heavyweights to give Adamek his due.
His work, to give Adamek his experience, give him that work, get him elevated in the rankings, try and get his world title fight, which he actually did get in the end. It was just one of those guys who was just outsized, and obviously again light heavyweight, cruiserweight at that time, the money wasn't there in those fights, was it really? No. I mean, I don't know how much, if I could find actually how much both fighters earned, Briggs and Adamek, how much they made for the fights and stuff, but it wouldn't be big money. And you can imagine looking at the cruiserweight fights and that, you can imagine like Bobby Gunn's not bringing in like big money. I mean, that's the reason why they held those fights in New York, Chicago, took him back to Poland to fight O'Neal Bell, and take the Klitschko fight to Poland and that, because obviously they could pull in the crowds, earn a decent payday and that, but it wasn't the big money wasn't there, so he hung about a heavyweight slightly too long. And it's probably an ideal time actually. Steve discussed the Jarrell Miller fight. That was an absolute bloody shambles. That was an absolute crying shame.
That was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's late last year. To see him get iced like that in 2 rounds, I remember a far, far better fighter, a guy who could take a right hand, even though he was fighting a guy who was over 300 pounds. He could take a shot.
They only put that fight on because it was in Chicago, though, didn't they?
Yeah, but it was one of the Hearns. I think he was that the one that Callum Johnson was on with Beterbiev and stuff. So, one thing I was going to ask Steve is one thing I had in my notes. I had a question mark next to this, and I'm not entirely sure if I'm right, but is Tomasz Adamek Poland's first ever world champion, or do we include Dariusz Michalczewski, who was actually kind of more classed as he was born in Poland but he lived in Germany?
Oh, I'm not really sure if it's for us to say, to be honest with you, but Michalczewski, yeah. I would say it probably have to be him, although you're right, there is the German connection, isn't there? I don't know, to be honest, but Michalczewski probably for me.
Well,
what do you think?
I don't know. I probably would need to go to Michalczewski because it's simply because he's born in Poland. I think he lived in Poland. I think, am I right in saying that, or was just that he kind of fought in Germany all the time?
Yeah, I think that he was definitely Polish, wasn't he, Michalczewski? I think he was just based in Germany because that was where the money was.
Yeah, but then he fought amateurs as under the German flag. But then again, I suppose the Germans were taking. The Germans are still guilty in that about what happened after the Second World War, so they would just fight anybody in.
Yeah, I think it was an old East Germany thing, wasn't it, that he was fighting under that? I think so, yeah. But I mean, if you look at Adamek's record, I think that where the money was probably made, 2009, Andrew Golota in Poland, or Big Derby. 2011, Vitaly Klitschko in Poland. We saw how many people were put in there. I say he would have put away about $7 or $8 million for that. Then you've got the fight against Artur Spilka again, all Polish derby in Krakow, 2014. Goes back to Lodz to fight Przemysław Selita a year later, all Polish derby. He's really packing them in, isn't he? How on earth Joey Abel got registered to fight for the Republic of Poland international heavyweight title last year is beyond belief. But if you look at all those all Polish derbies plus the Klitschko fight, I'd say that's where the money was made.
Definitely. It was just, I remember actually just as I pulled up there, the Eric Molina fight. It was, again, that was another sad spectacle actually. Went to 10 rounds. I even think Molina might have been I don't know if he was a late replacement for that fight, but Adamek actually announced his retirement no long after it, or in fact right after that fight. Even with the knockdown in the 10th round, if Adamek got that, he was ahead by 5 points on the cards. All he had to really do was get up. All he had to do was get up and hold on for the next couple of rounds, and they won that fight. And I don't know if I'm right in saying this, Steve, but did Eric Molina end up fighting Joshua around about 2016, 2017.
I don't know whether he'd already fought him by that point or whether he went on to fight him afterwards. Oh, here we are. Yeah, that was the fight after he knocked out Adamek. They probably sold it off the back of that. I can't remember at the time, but he was coming off the back of a knockout, wasn't he?
Yeah, I was just thinking because it's obviously how the mind works. Because I just pulled it up there. Molina actually fought Joshua after this fight. With Adamek, I've got the call to fight Joshua if he'd have won. I mean, as I say, he was 83 ahead, all the three judges' scorecards.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. So if he'd have, he was 88 to 83 ahead on all cards. So if he'd have basically kept out of the way for the last round or so, then we could have seen Tomasz Adamek getting dragged in against Joshua, possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, he fought Solomon Hamano, who I think
He's an Aussie, isn't he? Yeah.
Joseph Parker beat him, and Fred Cassie, who, and then again, as I say, is the Jarrell Miller in that fight. He shouldn't need the money, Steve. I don't think so.
No, I can't do frigging hell. He must have made millions and millions. Must have done.
But if you can still go draw in the crowds, I suppose.
Yeah, well, hopefully he's done now. That's the thing, and they won't bring him back. That would be the problem, wouldn't it? I'm just checking on his box right now to see how old he is. I would say off the top of my head, maybe 41 or so. Oh, he's 42. There, I wasn't too far off. No, he needs to pack it in now because he's had a long career, hasn't he? I mean, when did he turn pro? So 2018 was his last fight, and he turned pro in 1999. So you're knocking on 20 years. No, Tomasz Adamek doesn't need to be fighting anymore. That's him done, hopefully.
Plus, he's had over 120 amateur fights in that as well.
A lot of wear and tear. Hopefully he's invested his money and he's doing okay. Briggs seems to be okay. Adamek seems to be okay. We're okay as well, Andy. Let's wrap it up. Obviously, the fight we were there to talk about was Briggs against Adamek. Two great characters in and out of the ring. Thought Adamek was always just that step ahead. But as a Paul Briggs fan, he did himself proud. Didn't quite manage to win the world title. But again, we picked these fights because we think that it's worth the listeners, Patreon subscribers, going out and watching them.
Definitely, because it'll be a lot easier for us to kind of pick the big names, the big legends, and watch and discuss their fights and stuff. But it's good to kind of so these fights that we try to discuss that are usually kind of slightly off the reservation a wee bit. Fights that probably only the hardcore would really kind of remember, and that we've had guys requesting like Jeff Harden against Dennis Andries and stuff, and I hadn't even got around to watching those fights until that request came in. So it's been good to go away and watch those fights as well. As you say, we're good. Paul Briggs is good. He's in the Australian Hall of Fame as well. Maybe at some point, maybe Tomasz Adamek might at some point. I know they've got numerous halls of fame in America, and that's so he might end up in the New Jersey, New York State, somewhere on the Eastern Coast, Eastern Seaboard Hall of Fame somewhere as well. I dare say he deserves it.
Certainly does. Thank you very much for your time as always, Andy Patterson, and for everybody who are Patreon subscribers. This ends season 2. This was episode 10 of season 2. Season 3 will be starting very soon. We do have a list of fights put together, but as always, we will invite you to send in your suggestions, your requests, anything that you want to see covered. I know guys have sent things in the past and asked us to cover them. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but resend them in just in case I've missed them. Obviously, unless we don't usually tend to cover, like Andy says, the fights like your Tyson Lewis's and things that when we first set out to do this, we weren't going to cover fights that have already been covered. Like Mayweather, Pacquiao, they've been done to death, haven't we? We try to bring in fights that maybe haven't been covered as much, and this would certainly come under that category. Also, whenever we go on to the next season, we're going to do a live special, Punches from the Past live, where we're going to cover the George Groves James DeGale fight. We'll put that out right now. If anybody wants to come on the call or join us live in the hangout, we're going to do things a bit differently. We've never done this before in any of the previous 20 episodes, this one included. We've never done it live. So we're going to do Punches from the Past live, James DeGale versus the recently retired George Groves. You can join us in the chat box on the night while we discuss it. It'll be me. Andy will be there as always, hopefully a couple of the other guys. But you can join us on the panel or in the chat if you want and talk about James DeGale, George Groves from, what year was it, Andy? 2010 would it have been? Or before that, no? 2008?
It was very early in the careers, actually. I think
2007, actually, was it? No? Because No, it wasn't then. It wasn't as early as that.
And I've just pulled it up here. 2011 it was.
There you go. I was going backwards. We should have been going forwards. Yeah, so we're looking forward to that one, Andy. Punches from the Past live, James DeGale against George Groves. Any of the listeners want to join us on the call or in the chat, then we'll go through that one live. So it's a first for Punches from the Past.
Definitely a first for Punches for the Past. And we'll need to kind of investigate these scorecards to make sure there's been no Carl Froch influences here. There's like 115, 115 and 115, 114. Oh, just, I think I actually had that draw, maybe Groves by a point. We'll wait and see how we'll watch it again and find out.
Exactly. Have a watch, everybody. I'll try and put a copy in the Patreon so you can watch it as well, and send in your scorecards on the night, and we'll go through it. Thanks as always to Andy. I've been Steve Wellings. Thank you very much for subscribing. We'll catch you again soon. Bye.